Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. This episode is completely free, like the endless spells that you're about to get in Age of Sigmar. Dun, dun, dun. That's right. Endless spells are free in Age of Sigmar 4. Not only that, do they have health, and so does Terrain. And not only that, this one is going to blow your mind. Terrain is going to be able to fight other Terrain. More on that, well, not later, right now. We're going to talk about that right now. Thank you to the Twitch chat, to everyone who leaves a comment. Please do leave comments, like and subscribe. If you do that, it really helps me out. And if you'd like to join the Honest Wargamer Patreon, please do. That'd be super sweet. Thanks for supporting me, etc. Okay, here we go. Okay, we're going to talk about endless spells. I guess I probably should just jump off of the bat. What the hell is an endless spell, Rob? If you've not played Age of Sigmar before, this is what they look like. In Age of Sigmar 2, the launch of Age of Sigmar 2, Nagash was doing some shenanigans, and then at the very moment his upside down black pyramid, don't read anything into that, was about to conquer the worlds, some Skaven who were inside it did a little bit of chicanery and trickery, made it break. Therefore this massive magical release got pushed out into the world, and then magic became real. It's kind of like the Pinocchio version of magic, something like that, I think. Anyway, so what happened was, now we had these physical manifestations of magic in the realms, and they're kind of themed on the different realms. For instance, the jaws that you see over there, Realm of Beasts, Purple Sun, Realm of Death, and these other things, although they didn't quite stick to that, to be honest. However, those are what you get, and they are all boxed up in two different boxes. So there's the Forbidden Power box, and then there's the OG Endless Spell box. These are, I think, and I'm not sure if this is true, do let me know in the comments below, because in different countries, some countries they're still available, in some countries they've been rare as rocking horse shit for years. So let me know. I don't know what the situation is. However, these are things that are incredibly kit bashable, especially great to theme with your army, in my personal opinion, because some of these are very bad sculpts that are not cool. So you can do some really wicked kit bashes, 3D prints, and other stuff. So don't feel like their availability means you can't use them. Thank you very much. Okay, so those are what endless spells are. Okay, in Age of Sigmar 3 right now, you have to pay points to use endless spells. You can only take up to 3, and you need a wizard for each one you want to bring along. That's all gone now, so we're going to be talking about summoning manifestations. So manifestation, all endless spells have been moved to become a manifestation, right? Manifestations have now been grouped into thematic laws, and you'll be able to pick one of these laws alongside your spell law and prayer law when building your army roster. Let's just stop right there, because this is massive. This effectively means manifestations are, for lack of a better word, mandatory. So if you have some wizards, then you will pick a spell law, and as we saw in earlier Age of Sigmar articles, you'll pick a spell law, and then all of your wizards will be able to attempt to cast spells from all of the spell law. So no longer do you write your spell specifically to each wizard. There's a lot more scope and range for tactical play, which is a great and positive thing, in my personal opinion. Now the endless spells are, the manifestations are free. You pick a manifestation law, and then you have access to manifest them. Therefore, in your box, you're going to be bringing your army, your terrain feature, and your manifestation selection, effectively. Will you have the option to have more manifestations or more manifestation laws? I don't know. You'll also have the option to change up from having a generic manifestation law, which we'll look at in a minute, to your faction-specific spell law, manifestation law. So if you're playing Slaanesh, there are 3 endless, manifestations for Slaanesh. You'll be able to pick those and that manifestation law versus a generic one. If you don't have a manifestation law, like Cities of Sigmar, then you'll have these. Another great thing is this really opens up the option to have some wizards who maybe know a manifestation law as part of their war scroll, which is kind of fun and spicy. There is a massive negative to this. So, okay, let's focus on a positive. A positive is that you don't have to mess around with points and choosing the best one. In addition, because they're broken up into individual laws, grouped laws, that means you won't be able to cherry pick the best one. And if you do choose, let's say Purple Sun is the best one in the game, you choose that, but you really want one of the spells that's in one of the other manifestations, you're not going to be able to choose one of the best. So this does mean that you're going to have these other random spells, and you might get some really unique and interesting plays, combinations, and iterations on a game. So that's kind of a massive positive in my opinion. The negative, though, is that it feels like they're mandatory. Therefore, buying them, painting them, even just carrying them around is a bit of a problem. But I guess, why don't you want to carry your stuff around and have a good time? I'm not sure. But it does mean, especially for new players, which is meant to be the new player edition, I'm now making them buy a book, buy an army, buy a terrain feature, buy a manifestation lore. Also, it does also mean that manifestation laws, if they're strong or strong-ish, is going to scale really badly downwards. So at 2,000 points, being able to have access to like 4 of these manifestations might not be super strong. But is it strong at 1,000 points? Is it strong at 500 points? I guess that's why the game is modular, because you can obviously then remove manifestations out of the game as a module, which maybe that would help. So there we go. Okay. So we know that. Let's look at what they look like. Sorry, just to repeat this. Factions which have their own unique manifestation lore can choose to pick from that lore. I've talked about that already. Alternatively, any army, even those with unique manifestation lore, can pick one of the following universal manifestations. So let's look at the universal manifestations. First up, the Aether-wrought machineries, Quicksilver swords, which they've showcased, Chronomantic cogs, and Pendulum, which probably means 2 damage spells and some sort of like buff piece in this lore. For the Primal Energy, you got Burning Head, probably a damage spell. Ravanax Gnashing Jaws, probably a damage spell. And then the Emerald Life Swarm, which is probably a healing spell. For the Twilight Sorceries, you get the Umbral Spell Portal, Geminids of Ulgish, and the Prismatic Palisade, which they featured. So the Umbral Spell Portal normally lets you cast spells at a further range. Geminids normally messes with command abilities, and the Palisade normally blocks line of sight. There is a final one, and this one is from a separate box, which is Forbidden Power, which is the Shards of Valagar. And I'm actually kind of excited that stayed, because Shards of Valagar is one of my favorite things to just say. I've brought the Shards of Valagar. Then Lack 1, the Soul Seeker, Horrorghast, and Soulscream Bridge. The issue with both of these two, with this particular spell lore, is that the Shards of Valagar is 2 pieces, and as is the Soulscream Bridge. That is an absolutely massive amount of the board that you're going to be able to take up with endless spells and do what we call move blocking, but we'll talk more about that in the future. Now, the biggest piece of news, potentially, is that the Kronspine Incarnate of Gur, a wildly unpopular piece of terrain that was buried in a massively expensive box at release, was and is also a manifestation. And I would really appreciate, boos in the chat and boos in the YouTube comments for this. I would have loved to have seen this go away, because it sucks. That's all I'm going to say. It looks bad, and I hate it. It's tacky, and I hate it. That's my opinion. However, this does mean that you are going to be able to bring these manifestations to the table, and this is a big deal, because if we go on to look, manifestations now have unit profiles. Manifestations are not like the spells where they were only really the purview of wizards previously, although I'm sure that's how you'll summon them. But they do have profiles, and therefore they're interactable by your army, and it's not just a wizard's thing. And while the Kronspine Incarnate being free, sure, maybe its War Scroll is terrible, but it does mean that basically everyone's going to be playing with 2,000 points plus. However good a Kronspine Incarnate Gur is, let's say it's only worth 100 points. It does effectively mean we're all going to be playing a 2,100 point game, if that makes sense. Although I'm sure it won't be 100 points worth of value and probably be a little bit more effective. So how much value is that going to bring? And is it going to be everywhere? Is a great question. So let me know what you think. So this is another piece of great news. Endless spells now have profiles. They have the Quicksilver Swords is the one we're going to look at. It's got 6 health with a 5-up save, and it has a 6-up ward save and can fly. It has a banishment value for getting rid of it, and it's got a movement value, and it has 12 attacks. They hit on 3s, have rend 1, damage 1, and they have critical mortals. So they're very similar to what they do now, especially with its special ability, Dancing Blades, which means you cannot make ward save rolls against attacks produced by the Quicksilver Swords, which is a positive. It's an overall positive, I'm going to say, that this is a unit profile. And it's also similar to what it does now. So if you already like Quicksilver Swords, it's kept some of that, like, some of that zhoosh, which is super fun. Interesting that they put ward in keywords. We've seen the ward in keywords already on other War Scrolls, so it's worth noting that, they've got a lot in there now, which I think is good. Okay, let me know in the comments below what you think about it being a War Scroll or a unit, which I think is quite interesting. The first thing you'll notice is Manifestation War Scrolls resemble regular units. They can now move, charge, attack, take damage, and use abilities in much the same manner as units. So if you can't banish those Quicksilver Swords, you can send a monster to bat them down or a unit to shoot them from a safe distance, so they can be shot. Though similar to units, manifestations aren't exactly going to listen to commands from a nearby hero, and their shimmering magical nature leads to some key rules differences. Additionally, some of the manifestations, such as Prismatic Palisade, have a move characteristic of dash. So we're going to talk about this. Okay. These are special rules that are going to apply to manifestations. Models can move through manifestations but cannot end a move on them. That's super okay, because in the past, what people used to do is they used to build like a wall of manifestations or endless spells so that you couldn't finish your move through them and would be blocked. I think that that's going to be the same again in this, in that you're going to be able to potentially not be able to move past them, because imagine you put 2 endless spells in front of the enemy unit and they only move like 3-4 inches. I don't know why, but I'm just picking a low number. They wouldn't be able to complete a move through it, so they wouldn't move through it. Now, because they're units, you can just attack the endless spell and get rid of it. That's a massive bonus, because while the move blocking is still there, destroying stuff is excellent, and that's really, really positive. And it's also really fun. Like, it's a great story. I love the idea, someone pointed out in the chat earlier, of a purple sun being put on the board and then a grot being like, I want to try and punch that in the head, and then you not being able to punch it. And it's just funny. Just a goblin trying to fight a purple sun is hilarious, right? Okay. So then the next one is a unit can finish a charge move within half an inch, and then they can be picked as the target of any abilities like shoot and fight. So you are going to be able to engage with them, fight them, and shoot them. Like I said, great. Can be damaged or destroyed, but don't count as destroyed unit for battle tactics or abilities. That's also excellent. So they're not manipulatable. Great. Can only use core abilities or abilities on their War Scroll, like fight and other stuff. They cannot use commands or be affected by friendly abilities unless they specifically affect manifestations. This is great because it opens up the design space, and that we can get wizards, units, maybe even spells that are going to be able to affect manifestations. It adds a little bit more, like, someone could become like a manifestation specialist wizard, which is kind of fun, or like, the commander of manifestations, which is cool as well. They cannot contest or control objectives, which is great. Love that as well, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, onto the problem wordage, at least in this. So they've tried to give us a bit of a review of what manifestations are typically going to be able to do, although most Warhammer people and most gamers don't love a generalization of what something does, and instead would like the specifics, because there will be some endless spells that can do the things it's saying you can't typically do, which is why it's in here. So it's kind of an odd section from the article, but it's fine, and it tries to give us some information. So you have moving manifestations and then also static manifestations, 2 different ones. For moving manifestations, you typically need to set up 9 inches away from them and will need to retreat to move out of combat, so you can't deep strike near them. Also, typically, you cannot be set up within 9 inches of enemy units when they're summoned, and they haven't in this article described how they are summoned, and can't move in their movement phase after being set up. So you're no longer going to be able to deploy, use them on the first turn, which gives your opponent the ability to charge them, shoot them, get them off the board, which is great. Okay, then you have static manifestations. You can ignore them when setting up units, and you can end a move within 3 inches of them, and you can freely move away from them. So you're going to be able to basically ignore them for the purposes of combat ranges, which is good. You cannot use any abilities that involve moving on static manifestations, and you typically have more freedom to place with them when summoned. So you've got more options for where you can put them, maybe closer than 9 inches because they're static. So that isn't, I think that's just going to be a broad overview, and then each one will be its own unique thing, which is fine, I guess. I could have done with them just ignoring that info, I guess, but it's in there, and that's cool. So static manifestations, next one we look at is Palisade, Prismatic Palisade. It's got a health of 8, it's got a 4-up armor save, a 6-up ward, and it's got a banishment of 7, and it has the ability to make it so that you cannot draw line of sight across it. you also cannot target this manifestation with a shooting attack, which is quite fun. Means you need a character or a monster or a unit to go over and literally smash the palisade down, which is kind of thematic and very cool in my opinion. So that's great. So the palisade doesn't block movement? No, the palisade will not block movement. So that's it for manifestations so far that in this article. Probably loads of questions have come up, and if you do have them, leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them as I see them. But I've given you all the information that's in this article. But the key takeaway is the fact that they're free is nuts, and you're going to see a lot more endless spells on the board. If I bring 4 endless spells, or 4 manifestations, sorry, you bring 4, and we all drop them on the board is going to be very, very full of manifestations. All right. Faction terrain features. This is the other spicy bit from this article, which is really fun. Terrain also is a unit now. It has a health pool, it has an armor value, and it has its special rules on it, which is fun. So you're going to be able to shoot it, fight it, and engage with it. Because it's static, like we saw with static manifestations, you're going to be able to move past it, around it, and not be considered to be in combat with it unless you decide to attack it, or if that terrain feature is garrisoned by someone. The really cool thing as well is this adds up some design space as well, like with manifestations, in that you could get weapons that are like anti-terrain 2+ or something like that. Like that would be super fun. So it's obviously got the terrain keyword. So you could be like anti-terrain 2+, 4+, a cannonball, a catapult, a spell that is good against terrain is super fun. Yeah, siege breaking units, all sorts of stuff. This also means that they could potentially bring out castles, ramparts, and other fun stuff in the game in the future. So ultimately, pretty great. Gargants kicking them definitely will have anti-terrain. This particular terrain feature has got a control value of 0, but there's this really fun little line in here. Like manifestations, these terrain features also have a health and save characteristic and can be targeted by enemy attacks, such as well-aimed cannonball. So down here it says, like static manifestations, faction terrain features don't threaten units around them, so you can freely move up to and away from them, unless they have a hero placed on them, as I talked about. Some rare faction terrain features can even move or fight. Stay tuned for the faction focus articles to learn more. Now, my hot guess is that the Ogre Moor Tribe's Moor Pit, or as it's known as the Mussy, can move around and fight. And it's kind of upsetting that the Magnet Battleforge can't. It's got literally a big mouth on it to go bite things. But I think you're going to see some really fun stuff there. And ultimately, I'm really excited about that. The Magmic Forge itself has got 8 health with a 3-up armor save. And it's got a 6-up ward. It's got basically 2 abilities. One you can use at the start of any turn, which allows you to add +1 to the chanting roll for a priest that's within 3 inches of it. And in addition, that priest can also become unbind like a wizard 1. It has a once per battle ability where you can use all of the force inside of the forge, and you can heal as long as there's a priest within range, and you can heal every Fire Slayer unit on the board up to D3. However, you then won't be able to use the Molten Blessing ability, which is your +1 to chant, and your Wizard Dispel. So that's quite fun. Not super powerful though. Now, it was pointed out in the chat already, and I think it's a good point, is that, and this is something I've said a lot about Age of Sigmar 3 already, I've talked about artifacts and command traits and things like that. When something is free, because the cost is the same, the quality of the thing should always be equal. But some manifestation laws are just going to be better than other manifestation laws. We get this in Age of Sigmar already. Some of the terrain pieces are just much more effective than the terrain pieces that another faction have, but they cost the same. They're always free. So that free cost really crunches down the design space, because you can't have something crazy powerful. It also means you couldn't create like a generic kind of terrain piece you could bring along and other stuff, because it would be free, but then it's like, how would it interact? So I've always been a little bit against this and would like to see them cost points. But ultimately, I guess it makes it simpler. I guess you don't have to think about it at the list building stage, and you just choose your favorite manifestation, and you kind of just add it on, which is very much how they feel like, it feels like how they're wanting to build the edition. So that's all of it, and I would be interested to know what people think. I think most of these are massively positive changes. Terrain having special rules, excellent, because it means I can have anti those special rules, and becoming war scrolls themselves so that I can engage with them, becoming units is great. And I think the same for spells as well. I think it's thematic, I think it's fun, and it's a nice kind of like clean up of that design. I think it's good. So overall, really positive. The fact that you have to bring a little bit more to a battle, and if you're new, you might have to buy a little bit more to play your army. A little bit disappointing. It just pushes up that barrier to entry for new players, which obviously we always want to see go away. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening. Thank you to the Twitch chat. You're all the best. See you all soon.